What are you guys going to learn today? Really, the goal is how email and social work together to be able to build both your newsletter, but also use your newsletter to drive your social and vice versa. And more specifically, I want to talk about how to leverage social media. And I'll show you guys screenshots and examples of how I've done it and how other creators have done it to build a really large and highly engaged newsletter. And with that, right, like I'm going to focus on things that are highly actionable. I'm going to show you literally screenshots of what you can do after this call and throughout the coming weeks. And let's get started. So I'm going to start kind of at like the 101 level, and then we'll work up to kind of being more intermediate and advanced towards the end. So why email? I think a couple of reasons, right? Like email's been around in its same form for the most part for a very long time, right? It's very tried and true. It doesn't matter whether you're in SaaS or e-commerce or info, email is going to be a really strong channel. And oftentimes in the world I live in e-commerce, it drives 25, 30, sometimes upwards of 40% of a brand's entire revenue. And most of the clients we work with do $1 million to $100 million a year in revenue. So that means email does anywhere from 200,000 to $20 million a year for some of these brands. And with that, I think right now, with all the chaos on Facebook and Google and et cetera, with iOS 14 and iOS 14.5 that took away some of the tracking and some of the personalization, email by far and large is the best channel for personalization. You know where people are, whether they've visited your website, what products they've purchased, what articles they've read. So the ability to personalize outside of just things like first name is really strong. It's very predictable, where if you have a list of 50,000 people and you've done $25,000 a month in revenue, plus or minus a couple $1,000, you're going to be able to do that same thing every single month or every single quarter. It's also very profitable. So outside what you pay to acquire an email and maybe what you pay for your email platform, and then potentially the salary of what you pay for someone to be an email marketer, or oftentimes maybe you do it yourself. Other than that, like it's all gravy. It's all profit, right? Whereas when you spend money on Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads or Google ads, every time you want to acquire a customer, you're having to pay yet again. And then it's very conversion focused. So if you look at the data, the likelihood of someone converting and buying from you over email versus social media, email is like 3 or 5 times harder, 3 or 5 times better. I don't remember the exact statistic, but email is a lot more conversion focused, especially in my industry of e-commerce. Most people are opting into a list for some kind of offer, free shipping, a percentage off, $1 off, free product with purchase. So it's very conversion oriented. So that's why email. I'm sure most of you guys already know that. And then why social? So email is only as good as the traffic and the leads that you have coming through. And social media is a really great way to drive that traffic. Other ways are things like, so it's organic versus paid social. There's things like SEO, affiliates, influencers, et cetera. But social media is my favorite way to build traffic for newsletters in particular. And with that, right, you have the ability to go viral, where on email, you're not going to go viral, right? You're contained to the number of people on your list. On social, you could go viral. On LinkedIn, you could get 1,000 people to read it. You could get 1 million people to read it. And obviously in between and more. I also found it as a really great way to test content. So especially on Twitter and more so on LinkedIn as my following grows, the more content I put out, the quicker the feedback loop is, where I know if something's going to hit or not. And if something, short form works on Twitter or LinkedIn, it shows me that I can now maybe draw something out longer, whether it's like a Twitter thread or a LinkedIn carousel or like a long form newsletter on a specific topic. The other thing that's really cool about social that I've done pretty well on Twitter in particular is you can boost organic posts with ad dollars. So say I post like a thread or a post that I think does really, really well in terms of capturing the message about me. I can go retarget my own followers with that and make sure that they see it, because oftentimes on social, only a smaller percentage of your followers are actually ever going to see your posts. So that's why social. And then I want to quickly talk about the results I've had and then show you how to get there. So I kind of want to show you, where I got to and then how to reverse engineer that. So my results. So in March of 2022, so about a year ago, I had 24,000 followers on LinkedIn. And if you fast forward to today, this is, I think, like a day or two old, but I now have 184,000. So I've gone from 24,000 to 184,000 followers in a year. And I only really started taking LinkedIn serious right here, which was in August of 2022. So In 7 months, I went from 27,000 followers to 184,000 followers. And what has that done? You can see here on my screen, I've got all your guys' faces over it. Okay, there we go. So you can see the subs I've driven from LinkedIn. I've driven 29,000, almost 30,000 subscribers from LinkedIn. And then from Twitter, which I've been taking serious longer, I've driven 38,000 subscribers. So if we look at that on the next slide, about 90% of my email subscribers, so I've got 75,000 total, about 90% of them have come from Twitter and LinkedIn alone. If I was better at YouTube, if I was better at Instagram, if I was better at Facebook, if I was better at TikTok, maybe that number could be higher, but I've really chose to dominate kind of what I call like the written platforms. Obviously they're visual in the fact that you can have photos and whatnot, but most of my content is text-based and kind of some carousels, but 90% of that came from Twitter and LinkedIn. And again, don't like talking about myself, but to quickly kind of go through some of these things, I'll make between mid to high six-figure revenue in 2023 just from my newsletter and social sponsorships alone. And that's not my main business. That doesn't include things like courses, agency clients, consulting. Every single month, it provides dozens of qualified leads for my agency. And a qualified lead is a brand that has to do a minimum of $1 million a year in e-commerce. It's provided me great speaking opportunities like this one, podcasts, trainings, events. And I've had the opportunity to get to connect with some of my idols. So some of my favorite authors, some of my favorite CEOs have added me and said that they like my content, which is really cool. So that's the outcome. How do you now do this? Let's talk about that. So, and by the way, all clear so far? Everything makes sense? We're all good? Cool, okay. So I'm gonna talk about the social media fundamentals, and then we're gonna get into the fun stuff. So really like the basic stuff that most of you guys have probably done already, but I want to cover just so we're on the same page, is the key to LinkedIn and Twitter, and probably most social platforms, is you have to pick a niche. And the criteria for picking a niche is it has to be something that you're good at, something that other people are also interested in, something that you can monetize, and something that you're passionate about, right? If you can have those four, you're going to A, have longevity, and B, you're going to be able to add value to people, and 3, you're going to be able to add value back to yourself in the forms of money or goodwill, whatever that thing is that you're searching for. And then how do you do that, right? So once you've picked the niche, you have to build a memorable personal brand. So it's things like on Twitter, a simple handle and a name. On social media in general, a good looking profile photo. You want alignment across your bio, your photos, your description. On Twitter, your pinned post. On LinkedIn, maybe your featured post. And you want to be remembered for something. So I had an agency about 7 years ago that we couldn't scale past $30,000 a month. And when I look at why that was the case, it was because we offered every single service under the sun. We did email, we did SEO, we did Facebook ads, we did all of these things. And then the next agency I had, we were able to scale it to $80,000 a month because we started picking like 2 or 3 services. And then my third and fourth agency, we scaled to hundreds of thousands of, monthly revenue by doing just one thing, by being the go-to person for e-commerce email. So when you think about your brand, be remembered for something. The email guy, the Facebook ads girl, the LinkedIn guy, the Twitter girl, like whatever you are, be known for something. It's better to be known for something than forgotten because you do everything. Okay, so now let's talk about like how you build out kind of the profile matrix. So when you think about your niche and you think about kind of what you want to be known for, you then have to think about your voice, the things that you believe in, the things that allow you to draw those conclusions, and how you want to structure those posts. So with this, right, for me, I'm not polarizing. I'm not going to say something about religion or politics that pisses people off. That's just not me. I don't want to do that. I really care about playing nice and being uniting instead of creating differences. I want to bring people together. And I think that's been really a key of my content is like, maybe I haven't gone as viral as I could have been if I was polarizing, but I built a lot of goodwill and trust by just being very consistent. I don't cuss, I'm a family person, that type of thing. And how are the things that I believe and how is my voice going to come out? And what are the topics I'm going to talk about? So for me, it's things like email marketing, copywriting, e-commerce as a whole, my experience of building an agency, my family, sales and systems, right? So what are the things that I think about and I touch every single day? And those are the topics that I want to write about. And how do I have the relevant kind of criteria and experience to talk about those? It's through jobs I've had. It's through relationships I've had. It's through failures. I don't think people talk enough about failures. I think everyone wants to just paint this picture that they're so great and they're so amazing, which we all obviously are, but you build a lot of goodwill and you kind of humanize yourself as a brand through the failures and the lessons that you've learned, and then different projects and kind of aspirations. And then with all that, right, how do you actually structure that? So you know how you're going to say it, you know what you're going to talk about, you know why you're going to be able to talk about it. How do you structure that, right? So through comparisons, through statistics, you know, before and after, screenshots, you know, things like carousels on LinkedIn, right? Those types of things, like how do you structure it? And those play to your strengths. You know, I'm not really great at like graphic design, so I'm not going to create things that are too overly visual. I'll create basic kind of things on Canva. So play to your strengths, ignore your weaknesses is kind of how I think about it. And then with that, right, I think about like building out this trust profile, and it comes from like 4 things I want to focus on. One is making sure my content is super actionable. That's what differentiates me from others. Is I'm a practitioner. I do this day in and day out. I want to share kind of the in the weeds things that I learn, and that way it's very actionable. And you know, hopefully after this presentation, some of the things that we talk about in a little bit are things that you're going to be able to apply as well. You know, I also talk about aspiration, right? You know, we all want to be inspired. We all want to have stories of growth. So I want to talk about how I've grown from, you know, this having divorced parents, getting diagnosed with Crohn's disease, you know, X, Y, and Z to where I'm at now, right? Just showing people that the path to success is possible, irrespective of kind of the odds that are stacked against you. And then I also want to talk about things that are analytical. I want to talk about, you know, the learnings I found from studying e-commerce. You know, how much revenue is it going to do this year? How do people take a piece of that and kind of make money from it and really extract like the insight from the data? And then the last thing, right, is really around like psychology, studying people and behavior and sharing those learnings. So I did a post the other day, maybe a couple of weeks ago, about like, you know, different types of psychological traits that you can leverage in your marketing and ones that as a consumer you should look out for. And people always seem to love those things. They want to understand like the science behind why we make decisions. So again, these are the types of content buckets that I want to pull from. So if we go back to the last slide, you know, you come up with your voice, you have different things that you talk about, you have different experiences that you pull from, those come out with different styles, and then you kind of mix them up to these different types of posts. And that's how I think about my content creation. All makes sense so far? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And I think we're still like maybe scratching the surface of like 100, maybe the 200 still the beginning. We're going to keep going and kind of show you some more things coming up, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So social media tips. Before we dive into some of those things, I want to kind of just talk about general tips. You have to be consistent and patient. You know, I've been creating on the internet for 5 or 6 years, and people just started finding me 12 to 18 months ago, right? So you have to have faith that what you're doing is the thing that you're supposed to be doing, and you have to understand that it's going to take time. And you really have to mix quantity and quality posts. You need the right mix. I think for a long time when I was doing LinkedIn kind of half-assed, I was doing like 1 post a day, 1 post every couple of days. I was just kind of posting and then bailing. I wasn't engaging. Now I'm posting a minimum of 3 times per day on my own account. And oftentimes it could be 5. And I post 7 days a week. I don't just do Monday through Friday. I post every single day. I know people have opinions about that. My thoughts are every time I post, I'm giving myself an opportunity to add value, go viral, attract the right followers. So the more often I post, the more goodwill that I create. And one thing that I don't know if I actually mentioned at all in this presentation or not, but outside of my personal profile, I also run 4 theme pages on LinkedIn. One on AI that has 50,000 followers, one on copywriting that has 50,000 followers, one on marketing that has 20,000, and one specifically about LinkedIn growth. So it's very meta, and that has about 5,000 followers. And I've been building those pages out over the past 3 to 4 months. And that network now that I've been building is about 125 to 150,000 followers. So, you know, I'm posting a lot of times per day. Again, giving myself the opportunity to get lucky. I mentioned this a little bit before, but it's key to optimize your profile. I think about my profile as my landing page, right? My username, my profile, my bio, my pin tweet, my featured thing, those all are communicating the same story, that my expertise is around email marketing. You make your post easy to read, right? Make sure that it looks good, that it's formatted properly. I think this piece is really key, is offering value. And value comes in different shapes and sizes. It's educational, it's informational, and it's entertaining, right? Pick the one or the ones that are most like you. I'm not very funny, so I focus on the first two. I focus on being educational and informational because I'm not funny. And then I think the last few things I would say that I did wrong on LinkedIn in particular was engaging with my audience. I would post and I would bail, right? It was just like kind of an afterthought. I would post and I'd bail. Now I'm very intentional with engaging with people, replying to messages, replying to comments. And it's gone a long way, both for my own selfish good and also for other people's goods. And then similarly, I wasn't connecting with other people like Richard or other folks on the platform that had followings, smaller, similar, and larger. And it really makes a difference when you have a group or a tribe of people that want to see you win and you want to see them win. That's where really the magic happens. So, all right, that makes sense so far. We're now going to get very tactical about like how to actually acquire emails. Are we all good so far? Cool. Okay, so how to acquire emails from social media. Let's start with LinkedIn. So I'm going to kind of quickly talk about these bullet points out loud, and then I have a slide for each. So, right, very basic link in bio, very basic featured section of your post. One that I haven't seen anyone talk about, and I haven't really seen anyone do, is updating your post description. And I'm going to show you that, so I'm going to talk about that more in a second. Posting links in your comment section, I think that's becoming more popular. Dedicated posts about your newsletter, leveraging LinkedIn's newsletter to drive traffic to your own newsletter, and then leveraging viral content to plug a lead magnet. So again, right, small screenshot, you'll get the slides later, but link in bio up here, featured section here. That's all pretty straightforward and basic. This is an interesting one. So I see some people do it. I don't know if many people know about this or not, but what I basically do is I'll create a post, and maybe after an hour or after I deem that it's gone popular and it's kind of in LinkedIn's ecosystem where it's going to keep going, I will update the post. So you can see here, it's been edited. I'll leave kind of the content the same, but I'll add some kind of call to action of, hey, PS, 74,000 copywriters and marketers benefit from my newsletter, join here. So I'll do that, with different types of things. If I post about an email marketing post, I'll update that to talk about my email newsletter. If I talk about a copywriting thing, I'll talk about my copywriting newsletter. If it's a general marketing thing, I'll kind of pick and choose. And then I also have things like free courses and free lead magnets that I'll plug. So as much as possible, I'm trying to update this. And this is part of where, about 30,000 people from LinkedIn have come from, is by updating the bio is one, and the post description, I guess, sorry, not the bio. The next, right, this one I think you guys have probably seen, but I add after a period of time, this was 42 minutes after the post was live, that I added a comment, just same type of thing, just giving people that go into the comments an opportunity to see my newsletter call to action and hopefully subscribe. Okay, and then I'm sure some of you guys have seen Justin Welsh. He's fairly big on LinkedIn, really nice guy. So this is something he put on Twitter, but the same thing he's done on LinkedIn, where basically before he launches a newsletter edition on Saturdays, he'll say something like, hey, I've been noticing X thing, or I've been seeing X trend. So in this case, he goes, on Twitter, there's an algorithm change and my impressions have plummeted. Actually, however, though, once I figure this out, I 4x my daily average subscribers. And then he talks about, that's how you position your URL and tweets, subscribe to my newsletter, right? So just specific dedicated posts, either before, kind of hyping it, or after, like, hey, those people that aren't on my list, they missed this secret. I figured out how to 4x my daily average subs. If you want to get it, I'll make an exception, subscribe here. And then LinkedIn newsletter, right? So I think you guys have probably seen, maybe some of you guys even have LinkedIn newsletters. It's fairly easy to rack up subscribers or followers on this newsletter. And then you want to position these people to your own newsletter. So I'll do things like to my LinkedIn newsletter, hey, I made a free resource, 10 of my favorite copywriting frameworks. If you want them, grab it for free here. And it is a link to my website where people can opt in, and then they get the download, right? So leveraging kind of the owned audience, or sorry, the rented audience of LinkedIn, and funneling to the owned audience of your newsletter. And then the last one too is like, I created these series on like Chat GPT that went viral. So I ended up doing like a kind of a carousel on it intentionally because, I wanted to add value, but I also wanted people to have to download it. So you could see like the text version of it, but for people to actually copy and paste it, it was kind of annoying. So I basically put it together in a document and I said, hey, here are 25 of the prompts. If you want the written version so you can actually copy and paste those, grab them here. So it took them to my landing page that just said, enter your email below and I'll send you them for copy and paste. And that drove 3,800 people, right? So 3,800 people from a single LinkedIn post downloaded, this guide and therefore are now receiving emails from me. So that was really successful. That was LinkedIn. Any questions before we talk about Twitter? Are we good? Good. Okay, cool.
Chase, just give me a minute because I saw Anneke has a question. Do you cover different things in your email newsletters than what you cover on LinkedIn, topic-wise?
That's a good question. So everything is the same. Like later on, I'll show you like what days I cover which things. So on Mondays, I basically send like an email and a copywriting thing. On Thursdays to my newsletter, I send an email thing. And then on Fridays, I send a copywriting thing. So I talk about the same topics in terms of like email, copywriting, et cetera, because that's my expertise. But the actual content that I share is different. However, though, I will repurpose my LinkedIn, my content from my newsletter onto LinkedIn. So I do one interesting thing where I leverage my email newsletter to drive traffic to my LinkedIn, my Twitter. So every Monday, I'll publish the content I'm going to feature in the newsletter on Twitter and LinkedIn first. And for people to read it, instead of linking to my website or throwing an email, I'll link to my LinkedIn post. So I'm sending traffic from my newsletter to my LinkedIn, which helps these posts, kind of get a lot of traction because I'm doing it early in the post lives. That makes sense?
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about Twitter. And again, a lot of the same things are applicable. I'm just gonna go through them. So I'm just gonna skip to link in bio, right? Very straightforward, get a fair amount of clicks from link in bio. The next thing I do is after a thread has gone live or after a popular tweet has happened, I do the same type of thing. I'll plug my newsletter underneath the thread or a popular tweet. It's just a great way. Every time I do this, I drive anywhere from 10 clicks to hundreds of clicks, but they all add up because I'm doing this on a daily basis. So it's like small incremental wins over time. I've been doing this newsletter now for 2.5, 3 years, add up to be something large. Again, going back to the dedicated post about the newsletter, I think most people are afraid to promote their own things, and you can't be afraid. If you don't promote your stuff, no one's going to promote your stuff. So, doing things like this is really helpful to call action and drive traffic to your newsletter. So that was Twitter, again, very similar to LinkedIn. And now I'm going to go through just a bunch of rapid fire tips on things that have been interesting. So here, what I basically want to talk about is like repackaging and packaging previous carousels or threads. So on Twitter, I had written 3 marketing threads that had gone really viral. And then what I basically did is I aggregated them into one post where I basically said 3 marketing threads that are going to teach you more than any marketing class, right? How do you guys like that hook, right? People, that's probably the most polarizing I'll ever get. That's by far the most polarizing I ever get because like everyone has an opinion about the fact that they didn't learn enough of the actual stuff that they're doing in school. So 3 marketing threads, I'll teach you more, adding kind of the social proof that I've done over $100 million in revenue. And if you want these, retweet this and I'll DM you. So this concept on Twitter in particular, and I think on LinkedIn, it's probably a little bit harder, but there's the ability to do it if you want to do it manually. But I basically said, retweet this, right? So you can see 1,000 people retweeted this. It got almost 200,000 impressions. And what happened is I would automate a DM saying this, hey, here's a link that's going to apply a discount code that will make this PDFs free. Use this. I hope this helps. So on the page, it takes them to like a landing page. It shows the value as $29. It auto applies the code. So they feel like they're getting this great special deal. And I had 1,800 people from a single post on Twitter download this, right? So I'm a huge believer in repackaging and repurposing things that you've already done and putting them into different formats. So I took 3 things I did individually and I packaged them together to add a lot of value. And it made people kind of quote unquote work for it by retweeting it and liking and commenting on it to get it, which then shows it to all their followers, right? So it's kind of this network effect. Again, repurposing things. So I'll take my Twitter threads and repurpose them into LinkedIn carousels. So very easy to do. LinkedIn really seems to be eating up the carousel format. Twitter used to really love the thread format. So just repurposing things that you're doing already. Take your blog post and repurpose that into a tweet or a thread. And then leverage other channels to cross promote. So I'll use, like, for example, this is my Instagram. I'll use my Instagram to drive traffic to my Twitter. I'll use my LinkedIn to drive traffic to my Twitter and vice versa. You want to send and kind of cross-pollinate and cross-promote your channels so that way you can get more reach and more eyeballs on your content. I don't think enough people are doing this, but they should be doing this. Leverage other people's audiences. This guy's gotten, I think he's gotten bigger. His name's, I think, Jose. He's gotten bigger on LinkedIn. He's been creating some great content, but this was something he reached out to me back in April on Twitter of last year. He only had 3,000 followers. He DM'd me saying, hey, I'm putting together an expert roundup on Twitter, and I'd love for you to contribute. By the way, I've already got responses from X, Y, and Z, right? Like other influencers in the space to add that credibility. And look how well his tweet did. For only 3,000 followers, he had almost 1,000 likes, 200 retweets, and 19 quote tweets. I don't know how much it got him after, but I got to imagine he probably gained hundreds, if not maybe thousands of followers just from this post. So oftentimes too, just being like a master kind of connector and then kind of leveraging other people's audiences for A, the content, and B, the distribution is a really great hack. And you see some people doing this on LinkedIn, right? Someone might say something like, hey, here are 5 things I learned from Richard. And then, if Richard gave permission and he engaged with it, it's going to help his followers see that post, right? So this is a really great way is to like partner with other people to create content that leverages all your guys' audience. I alluded to this earlier before, but like one of the things I've done really, really interestingly on Twitter that I haven't seen anyone do is retargeting my own followers with content I want them to see, even things that aren't promotional. Like I'll write like a really great thread and I just want to maximize the eyeballs on it because if my followers engage and then shows their followers, my content as well. So I've been very tactical by spending $10 to $20 a day on my own content. And that's been really helpful for growing the following with people that are engaged with my content. This was an interesting one. So most people create threads, and before I only dropped the thread like a tweet at the very bottom of the thread after people read all of it promoting my newsletter. But this is a guy that in the middle of this thread, so he's talking about brands that did marketing or something. On his third one, he did like this mid-thread newsletter break where he goes, hey, do you notice a common thread? X, Y, and Z. By the way, I've got a great newsletter. And then he says right here, now back to it. So instead of waiting to the very bottom of the post that a percentage of people are going to see, he actually plugged his newsletter in the middle of the thread, which is kind of interesting. This was an interesting way to plug it while you have people's attention. So I mentioned this before, but like the key to this thing working was prompting engagement and then triggering a DM. I think there's other ways to do this too. One of the things that I've been doing on LinkedIn is I've just had no shame, and I've basically just been telling people in like the PS of a post, this takes me a long time to write. Will you please like and comment on it? That's your way of paying for my content is by engaging with it. And by asking that out loud, I've noticed a lot more people engaging with my content, even just saying things like thanks or this is great, which really does well for my ego and also the post itself, right? Social proof is powerful. So this is one really interesting thing where this lady, she talked about her newsletter and was plugging her newsletter. And she actually took a screenshot of someone talking about how great her newsletter is. I haven't seen a lot of people leveraging social proof like this to drive traffic to their newsletter, specifically like in a tweet or a LinkedIn. Most people have social proof like on their landing pages, but actually leveraging social proof on the social platform, it sounds very meta, is very important. So that was a really good way to do it. And she was just driving traffic to her profile, and then people would have to click like her link in bio. And I think here, the reason that she did that, I don't know for sure, is oftentimes platforms like Twitter and LinkedIn will kind of, I guess, like not disqualify, but they'll deprioritize your post potentially if you have like a link right away. So I think what she wanted to do is drive traffic to her bio. So that way people would click the link in bio and this post could potentially do better. That's just my theory. And then, right, so I've been talking a lot about like social to newsletter. I mentioned this briefly before, but this is from, I think literally this week. This was this week's newsletter where I published the content first on LinkedIn, and I sent 75,000, obviously not all of them clicked it, but I sent to 75,000 people my link to my LinkedIn, which then if those people engage early and I'm sending a bunch of traffic to it, that's going to just help the post get the ripple effect of reaching a bunch of audiences, right? So like the whole thesis of this talk is really like social to LinkedIn, or sorry, newsletter to social, social to newsletter, right? They really work hand in hand. And I don't see a lot of people leveraging both the way that I'm hopefully explaining. And then here's the opposite, right? From social to newsletter, James Clear and his link and his Instagram posts. At the end of all of his things, he just says sign up for my newsletter and he links to it, right? Just a very simple kind of consistent plug in all of his stuff. And, with his reach, he's probably getting a good amount of people actually going to do that, even though it's a lot of work. You can't just click it. You actually have to go type it into your browser. But someone like him, he's probably getting a lot of people doing that, right? He had almost 11,500 people like it. He probably had 100,000 people see this, maybe. Partner giveaways. So this is a giveaway that I partnered in, or maybe this isn't what I did, but I did one of these last year with a couple other newsletters and people on social where we, all pulled in. I think there were 4 of us. We all donated $250 to buy an Amazon gift card. And then we all agreed to share the sweepstakes via email and via social. So that way we can kind of cross-pollinate audiences. I don't remember exactly. I think 4 of us drove in the ballpark of about 4,000 to 6,000 total subs, right? So I think each of us collectively got maybe like 1,000 or 1,500 new subs each, give or take. This was one we did about a year ago. So leveraging other creators and building, content, building gift cards, building giveaways that add value and all promoting it is a great way for you to grow with others. Cross promotion. So this is in my newsletter. I basically share a few newsletters that I've been enjoying, and other people share mine as well. So I just say, hey, here are 3 newsletters that are free that I've been enjoying, X, Y, and Z, and then other people will do this for me too. So getting other people to cross promote. Okay, I know that was a lot, and I did that really quickly. I just want to make sure we have enough time to get through this and then have questions. Are we all good so far? Does anyone have any questions? All good? Okay, cool. So email newsletter. So I want to talk about my specific newsletter now and kind of like some of the things that I've done. So I send 3 times per week. I started with 1, I went to 2, and now I'm at 3. And I think it's really easy to start with 1 and then ramp up to more versus starting with more and then having to scale down. So I think set the right expectation from the beginning, and then less is really more. And then over time, as you kind of get in the groove and as your followership and kind of readership grows, it does make more sense to send more often than not if you can. And then because I send 3 campaigns per week, right, 3 kind of manual broadcasts and sends, I also have automation set up in place that sell people my course depending on their different points of my journey. And I'm going to show you kind of some screenshots in 1 second, but after people open 10 emails of mine, they'll receive 5 emails over 5 days to buy my main course. So my main course is an e-commerce email marketing course at $749. And in this sequence, I basically introduce it to them and I offer them $100 off. So this automation alone has generated $53,000 for me on autopilot. I built it once and it just sends all the time. If I was to have to remember all the time to promote my course, I would forget. So that was that one. And I'm going to show you that in 1 second. And then after that automation, they'll go into another automation 2 weeks later, where I'll send them 3 emails 5 days apart, where I introduce them to other of my courses and info products. So let's dive in. So, I mentioned the frequency, sorry, and then I'll show you the other stuff. So I mentioned it's easier to start with fewer, and then I have themes and topics for each newsletter. So on Mondays, I send email marketing and copywriting stuff. On Thursdays, I send email marketing, and on Friday, I send copywriting. So every Monday, Thursday, Friday, people know what to expect from me. And I typically send around the same time. I'm typically sending, around 10, 11 a.m. PST. So I built, for people who have been in my newsletter for 2 or 3 years, I built them and trained this habit where every Monday, Thursday, Friday at 10 a.m., they're starting to look for it. And there's been times where my daughter's been sick or I've been out of the office, that if I don't post at 10 or 11, people are emailing me like, did I miss it? Did you kick me off? Like, what happened? People again, I'm not going to say it's tons, but I'll have a few dozen people every time that happens, reach out and be like, where is it? I'm ready. I'm waiting for it. Okay. This is the automation that I mentioned. So 22 hours after someone has opened their 10th email from me, I send them this email. And this is I wasn't able to include them all, but this is the email. I talk about things like I'm a regular guy, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I run an email marketing agency, we've done over $100 million in revenue. Here's the exact blueprint and playbook that we've run, and that links to my course page. Here's a code for $100 off, right, etc. So I have these different types of emails that touch on different things. If they don't buy on this one, they get the next one. So I talk about like how we've taken clients from 10K a month to, six figures a month. And then if they don't buy that, I talk about how like the biggest ROI in e-commerce is leveraging email marketing. And then I talk about, watch me build campaigns where like the way that I built this course was an over the shoulder look as if you were in the room with me and watching me build these campaigns. So I'll send 5 emails out to people. And at any point in time, if someone buys, they won't receive the subsequent emails because I don't want to like just annoy them and send them the same thing. So each of these emails has an offer. It focuses on a different kind of emotion and a different tactic of psychology, social proof, etc. And really makes it a no-brainer. So this is the automation that did about 54,000 in revenue just from 5 emails. And then the next one that happens is 2 weeks later, after people go through that automation, they'll start receiving 3 emails. One is about this forms product I have. Another is about 96 email campaigns you can send, and then kind of like an advanced tactic. And this is just the first email where it talks about like, hey, you need to build a list. But like, how do you build a list? Well, you actually have to have pop-ups and flyouts and these types of things to turn traffic into emails. And I've curated and put together my list of 20 best ones. And here's just like a screenshot of the social proof. So this goes out 2 weeks after they receive the other ones, and it goes in email every 5 days. So 3 emails over 15 days. And then also too, I'll send like sporadic promotional campaigns. So this was one I ran at the beginning of the month that did, this one did like $13,000 in revenue, which was something like over the weekend when my daughters were asleep, I was bored. I'm like, hey, I've been thinking about doing a discount for a while for my audience. It's been a long time. Let's do it. So I literally just wrote that. I was like, I've been debating this for months and I wanted to move forward with this. For the next 24 hours, you can save 40% on my flagship course. Thousands of people have bought this. It's the same playbook we run at my agency, et cetera, right? That was the first email. About 40% of the people opened this one. About 1.7% of people did it. And then the next email was just a reminder. And every single sale that you run, the last chance final reminder will always do the best, right? So this one had, these 2 sales combined equaled this one. So this is what I did. In every email I sent, I just excluded people that had bought. That way they're just not getting hounded with the same email. This was that. So you also want to run like sporadic promotional campaigns to have the automations going and then these kind of more, current type things going. Okay, so Richard, depending on what you want to do, I have just like a quick bonus on like one interesting tactic that I did a couple years ago that might be interesting, or we can skip to questions. What do you want to do?
There are just 2 questions that I'll bet you answer them in 5 seconds. So first question, Stefania Kruger, what tool are you using for your automation? Is it Woodpecker?
No, so Woodpecker, from what I understand, is primarily for cold emails. You want to use something different for like your actual newsletter. For me, I use a platform that I probably wouldn't recommend just because I use it for all my e-commerce clients. I've been using it for 5 years, so I'm in the platform every single day, but it's not for like a newsletter. The platform that I use is called Klaviyo. It's Klaviyo. But if I was to do like an actual newsletter, I'd probably use something like a ConvertKit or like a Beehive or like a Substack, maybe something like that that's really more oriented towards newsletters. I just do it because I live in the platform anyway and I know it inside and out. But yeah, like Woodpecker and GMass and Lemlist and some of these others, those are more for like cold emails, whereas like you want a different platform for your opt-in email.
Cool. And then Laura is wondering if the 40% discount is still available for your email marketing course. That's a great question, Laura.
Yeah, if you guys want it and you guys are in e-commerce, send me a DM or an email and I'd make sure that applies. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Of course. All right, so I'll do the bonus and then we'll take a few more questions. So this is an interesting one. I have to preface that this was in 2017. This was pre-GDPR, pre a lot of like the data and privacy rules and kind of regulations that went into place. But in 2017, I scaled an email newsletter from 0 to 500,000 subscribers in 10 months through very untraditional channels. This wasn't like we spent $1 million on Facebook ads and we acquired them at $2 and built it. There were 4 primary channels that we leveraged. One was cold email, one was giveaways, one was organic social, and then one was ambassador program. So I'm going to break it down. So this was an email travel newsletter where every single week, we would send you an email that allowed you to kind of mentally or visually transport to a well-known destination or a destination that was off the beaten path. So if you think about like Morning Brew or the Skim or the Hustle or any of those big ones, this was the same kind of thing that had a strong editorial and strong curation around travel. And what we basically did is we built a tool internally where we were able to aggregate data from Instagram. So people had emails and bios and email in their contact button. We knew basically based off the hashtag they posted with, hashtag travel, or the accounts that they followed, Nat Geo, or the geolocations that they tagged, something like Bali, Indonesia, that's like a big hub, right, for travel. So we were able to aggregate this data for about 5 million individuals off of Instagram, and we knew everything about them. All this information was public. It wasn't like we hacked them. We just aggregated public data. So we knew how often they posted. We knew the things that were in their bio. A lot of these people would say like influencer or nomad or remote worker or agency owner. So we would know all these things about them. And we would send highly personalized targeted emails, not selling them anything, but inviting them to join our newsletter and to join our community. It might be something like, hey, Richard, saw your hashtag travel post. I loved it. I'm a huge traveler myself. I wanted to share this community that we built. It's completely free. It's a Facebook group that we'd love to have you join, where we have 10,000 other like-minded travelers. Who knows? Maybe you could build friendships. Maybe you can find a loved one. Maybe you can get recommendations, right? And we'd invite them to join like a Facebook group. And one of the questions that we'd ask them is, what was your email, right? So then that way they could actually opt in. Other things that we would do would we just send them to a landing page and say, hey, we built this cool thing. If you want to receive cool travel tips like the ones that you share online, opt in. Or we would send them to a type form where we'd say, look, we're about to feature Bali, and we know that you visited there, that you lived there. Would you be willing to submit content that we could potentially use or feature? And if you get featured, we'll let you know. And if not, you're joining our newsletter. And we would have thousands of people or tens of thousands of people every time we did that fill out these surveys, and they would spend 15 to 20 minutes filling them out. And then we'd often take that content, and for the ones that we didn't feature in the newsletter, we would repurpose that on social and we would tag them. So we created like this loop where we had people giving us content and we would share their content, and then they would reshare us sharing their content. So that was the cold email portion. That's sometimes where the little of the gray area now with GDPR and some of the others, but this was pre that. The other thing that we did was giveaways. So we had a bunch of points from like previous businesses where we could buy airfare and hotels, where we would say, hey, enter into this giveaway to win 5 days, 4 nights, in Hawaii. And we would send it to our list, and then we'd send it to, kind of cold audiences. And then those people collectively would drive tens of thousands of signups. A few thousand of them were net new, but thousands of people would join. And then organic social. So the really interesting thing that we did here is we spent about $10,000 buying a couple different viral travel accounts. So we did cold email outreach to thousands of people that own travel accounts between 50,000 and 500,000 followers, offering to buy their account. And we ended up buying, I don't know, like half a dozen accounts that had between 50,000 and 500,000. We would completely rebrand it to our stuff. And then when we shared to people in our audience, they were stoked because they were getting featured on accounts that had 100,000 followers. And all the followers were real. We just bought the accounts. We didn't buy the followers instead of building it. And then the last thing was like ambassador programs. So if people referred a certain number of people, they would win like swag or they would win certain prizes. So this was one thing that we did. And this allowed us to scale our newsletter like faster than you could believe. So anyways, that is what I've got for you guys. I know I talked fast and went through a lot. Hopefully that was helpful. Thank you guys for listening live. Thanks for watching the recording for everyone else. And any questions?
Well,
I don't have a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Annika.
Oh, no, you go ahead. Oh, wait.
Well, I was just going to say, I have like a million questions like rolling around in my head that I'm probably not going to be able to pull together. And I really just want to say thank you. And I'm signing up for your course because this is gold. I mean, like literal gold, right?
Thank you.
And I mean, you've just expanded my brain on what's even possible. So I just really thank you for that. And my only question was, can we get the discounted course? And I'm all in. So I'll be sending you a message. And
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to hearing the answers to these other questions. And I'll chime in again if one of those rolling around actually comes to the surface.
Cool. Laura, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Laura. That was I agree with you. It's a lot of information, very valuable information. I was wondering, like, so you have those funnels, your email funnels and your automations, and so you have your flagship course, and now and then you sort of promote other courses. Are these, because I couldn't read it properly, are these lower price courses?
Yeah, it depends. Most of the ones there that I was promoting vary. I kind of staggered it between, like, I went with my forms course, which is like $79 to I went to one that was like $500 back to one that was like $150. So I kind of had different price points of different things. But yeah, I start with my flagship one because that's like my most popular course. And that's the one that I think people enjoy the most. And then depending on people's level of interest, I'll kind of introduce them to smaller or larger ones.
Mm-hmm. So, but you sort of gauge what kind of interest people have, and then you have separate automations for that, or you put them all on one big list. And
yes, that's a good question. So the ones that you saw were specific to kind of just people in general, where I introduced things. And then depending on like what people click, I might have like another sequence that, like, if someone clicked my flagship course, but they didn't end up buying, I might have specific ones for that. Or if someone clicked like the forms one, I might have like a follow-on email for that. So the two that you saw were more kind of like general, just introducing people to my ecosystem, because I don't really ever talk about my courses on social media. Like, you know, I'm really here to provide value, and it's crazy. Like when you add value first, like how many people actually come your way. Like I very infrequently ever say, come work with my agency. I never really have those call to actions. From time to time I might, but more often than not, 90% of the time, I just lead with value. And I've optimized my profile to say, sent billions of emails, $100 million of revenue, e-commerce email marketing nerd. So that way people that feel like they have that problem now or in the future will reach out, because I'm not really like in your face saying buy.
Cool.
Sorry, I have a quick question. These principles that you provide, you know, could we use them as well in sort of a B2B space with longer sales cycles, you know, with the same principles apply? I mean, obviously I understand e-commerce is quite different, but, you know, the standard foundation, you know, could we use that?
Like the content from today, not the course, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I don't think the course is a good B2B fit, but I think the foundation today, I think a lot of the stuff, especially on social, could be a good fit, right? Like generating the audience, trying to drive traffic to the newsletter, trying to drive access and kind of traffic to maybe like a webinar, like a demo, maybe an event that you're doing. So yeah, I wouldn't say like every single thing is applicable, but I think a lot of the principles are probably universal to some degree.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Laura, I think your hand is raised.
Yeah, one of those bubbled to the top. I remembered you mentioning your qualified leads, and that you work with companies with $1 million+ in revenue. Is that what I heard correctly?
Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask you this. So I have a couple different businesses, one of those serial entrepreneurs, but anyway, so one of them, we often have $1 million in revenue, but last year was not as great a year for some reason. And we use Klaviyo already with that business. And, you know, I might be interested in having a conversation with you. Do you ever, I mean, is $1 million like a hard requirement?
It is, and it's really more for like
Fair
your
enough.
protection. I'll really quickly touch on this, then we'll go to our question. Is like what we found by working with hundreds of brands over the couple of years is like, when they follow like 3 criteria, it ends up being really successful. At least $1 million in revenue, at least 20,000 active subs on their newsletter, and actively acquiring new, you know, people. It's really important, because based on our fee structure, like our minimum retainer is $6,500 a month, and it goes upwards to about $12,500. We want to make sure that we're profitable on our fees. And oftentimes, if you're not doing $1 million, it's hard, because like when we look at email, it's typically a percentage of total revenue. So we might be able to drive in the ballpark of 20 to 40% of revenue for you. So that means, you know, on $1 million business, we'll drive 200K to 400K a year. But if we're charging you, you know, 10 grand a month, that's 120 grand just right there. That doesn't factor in like your product costs or some of your other things. So that's why we do it. It's really more for your protection, because we want to enter into relationships that are mid to long-term focused, versus like we do it for a month, you're not profitable, you're pissed, we're pissed, etc.
We've been around longer than that to know not to get pissed after a month, but
yeah, of course.
But no, I understand completely, and I appreciate your insights on that, and I'll ping you when we get back up there.
Cool. And I have other great introductions of freelancers and smaller agencies that I send a lot of people to that I trust. So if you ever want an introduction in the future, happy to.
Okay, thanks.
Chase, first of all, thank you for this wonderful session. I've made a list handwritten of 12 action points. That's for me, that's huge. And I told you this, I think I told you this in the introduction. So I was advised about 2 months ago by somebody I really trust to say, you need to start your email newsletter. You need to like monetize your network, okay, with 100,000 followers. So yeah, I have my personal websites. I have signed up, and I have now, in 2 weeks, I have been putting like the PS in my post or the comment, like sign up for my newsletter. Yeah. It resulted in 700 subs, like in 2 weeks. So I was very surprised with that. I was like, wow. Still, what I get from this masterclass is like, if I don't have anything to offer, if I don't have anything to monetize, because I'm not going to sell my 10K, 20K corporate trainings via my newsletter, but if I don't have anything like a snackable course, an e-learning, am I correct that you need to have something like that to monetize your email, that you need to have snackable products that people can sell?
Yes and no. I mean, I have like the automations in place that sell the courses, but like I also do quite a bit of advertising revenue. Like I have, big e-com SaaS companies that pay me like, $5,000 to $10,000 a month to like advertise to my audience. So I think just by building the base of readership, like, you can make money off of, maybe someone that has a LinkedIn SaaS product wants to get in front of your audience, right? And they'll pay you hundreds or maybe thousands of dollars a month. So courses are one avenue, services are another. But I think advertising also is a really viable one. If you look at like the Hustle and Morning Brew and the Skim, they're doing 10, 20, $30 million a year in revenue, primarily on the back of advertising. So it's a really big business.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I think we have
any more questions
before you have to run. I have to take a few more questions.
Well, I'll ask then to expand on what Richard just said. Does this work also for like, say, tangible products, like the other company I was mentioning is a hair accessory company that we sell internationally. We've had a lot of success, but it is a tangible product. And I'm just wondering, though, I mean, I feel like the newsletter, and we do a newsletter, but not like what you do, right? And so anyway, does it work with that kind of a product, or really you're thinking about services?
Yeah, so I think like with the newsletter for e-commerce, it looks a little bit different, right? Where like you kind of have more of like a promotional calendar where it includes things like product launches or holidays, or like social proof. But I think like incorporating a newsletter into that mix is important, whether it's like linking to the blog post or featuring the community, or just sharing like helpful articles that you guys have read. So I think like part of it could be like creation, but I also think that like people shouldn't overlook like curation. Like maybe in the articles, you just share like your favorite things that you read that other people in the space would be interested in, right? So I think with an e-commerce physical product business, like a newsletter is important, but it's obviously different than like my business is like a standalone newsletter, right? Like it's a newsletter business is how I look at it, right?
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. One or two more questions?
There's one more question in the chat. I don't know if y'all saw it, but it was from
I haven't even opened it.
Did you get that answered, Annika? How do you get them from your list and automations interested in your consultancy?
Got it. Yeah, I didn't see that one. Yeah, I mean, I think like for one, like I've done a really bad job at telling people that I even have an agency. Like I think I could do better. I just don't like to be like, again, overselling. And it's interesting, like last year at my agency alone, like my social and my newsletter did right around $3 million in revenue for just the agency. And that's without like promoting it, right? So I can only imagine like if I was like more like promotional about it, but I just like to give content, and like people, if they visit my profile, will see that I have an agency. So sometimes I'll add like a plug or something in the newsletter saying like, hey, if you're looking for email help, message me or something. But more often than not, it's just like, this is who I am and this is what I do. And if people are interested, they reach out. So it's probably more passive than it should be, but I've just got so many things that like I'm working on, so many things that I'm kind of promoting that like my own things happen to be the ones I promote the least, right? Like if I'm promoting like a SaaS company, I want to make sure that because they're paying me, they're getting the most value. So yeah, I think like you would just kind of like, you could send specific emails or dedicated emails or have call to actions, maybe like a PS at the bottom of one of your newsletters saying, PS, I'm taking on a few clients, or we've got a few slots, or if you're looking for a great LinkedIn marketer, DM me, or if you're looking for a great Facebook ads person, email me, right? So I think you could just do kind of small plugs like that. We made it.
Really cool.
We did it.
Thanks. Yeah.
Really cool. Chase, thank you very much for this very, interesting, eye-opening masterclass.